A few years ago, my secret identity was revealed to the world by my brother, Sean Acor. In his TED Talk entitled, "The Happy Secret to Better Work," Sean told the story of how when he was 7 and I was just 5 years old, that he accidentally knocked me off the top of our bunk bed and sent me careening to the floor. And before I could let out a wail of pain and injustice, he blurted out the first thing he could think of to cheer me up. He said, "Amy, did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. You're a unicorn." To which I suddenly began to imagine the potential of this positive new identity, and I was completely oblivious to the anxious expression on his face as he helped me back up onto the bed. And so began my introduction into the world of positive psychology. Little did I know that my brother's TED Talk would one day go viral, reaching over 15 million views and earning me the typecast as Amy the Unicorn. Thank you, Sean. What I didn't expect was that someday I too would be giving talks. And as I went to my talks, businessmen would pass me by, and they would suddenly nod to me and tap on their tiny golden unicorn pins on their lapel as though I were Katniss from the Hunger Games. Or that I would one day have the opportunity to meet Oprah on the set of Super Soul Sunday and get to work with her, but not until after she called out from behind the set, "Bring out the unicorn!" To which I galloped out gleefully to meet my idol. It was one thing when my brother had called me a unicorn at the age of 7, but something altogether different when my own 7-year-old was caught in my makeup drawer, covered in my best lipstick, and she said, "Mommy, don't be mad, you're a unicorn." Nice try. While being a unicorn celebrity is fun and entertaining, I think the more magical part of the story is truly seeing the reach and the power that TED has had to spread happiness in our hyper-connected world. We have technology in our worlds today that would have blown our minds 10 years ago. Technology from 3D printed organs to the ability to FaceTime with family members on the other side of the world. It's amazing. But in the same 10-year period, we've seen that depression rates have doubled. We've seen that cyberbullying has increased by 88%. And we've seen that the number of teenagers who've been to the chiropractor for stress-related injuries like text neck have gone up by 50% now. We live in a world where technology has been called the greatest disruptor of human happiness in history. Is this really true? Or can our happiness, can our health keep pace with the speed of innovation? We live in a world now where we have so many distractions. Our inboxes are full to the brim. We receive so many different text messages. Netflix is continually uploading new episodes that we're supposed to keep up with. We have technology creeping into every crevice of our lives faster than we know what to do with it and what we can currently assimilate or even evaluate what this means for us. And so we try to live our best lives, but we find ourselves overwhelmed and frustrated. We find ourselves not able to figure out what are we going to do with this technology? How does it impact our lives? And as I speak to audiences around the globe, what I've noticed is that there's this deep concern that's been echoed over and again. Where are we heading right now? Where do we want to be heading in the future? And when we think about this, there's some burning questions that continue to bubble up and emerge. The questions like, how can I be happy in the midst of all this distraction? How can I teach my kids positive boundaries in the middle of this technological world dominated by negativity? And how can I actually use technology to help me to become more happy, to have more meaning in my life? And so these 3 questions continue to resonate, and I want to address the 3 of them today, starting with how can we actually be happy in the midst of all this distraction in our lives? The average smartphone user actually checks their phone 150 times a day now. 150 times a day. Now, if you conservatively estimate that each time you open and close your phone, it takes approximately 1 minute, that would account for 2.5 hours every day just opening and closing your phone, unlocking and locking it. 2.5 hours. That's the equivalent of 38 days a year just opening and closing your phone. This is crazy. I mean, the impact of distraction on our work is absolutely mind-boggling. In the process of writing my book called The Future of Happiness, I actually wrote a chapter on distraction. And then so in the process of writing, I decided I'm going to run an experiment to figure out just how distracted am I really. And in the course of 5 minutes, I discovered 5 or 6 interruptions in just that short period of time. A text message came through, a news alert, a calendar notification, the doorbell rang, and then my mom called, and at which point I just gave up trying to focus. I think sometimes we actually think that distraction is thrust upon us, but I actually think that sometimes we invite distraction into our lives. I think that sometimes we make ourselves the victims of distraction. Because when I ran my 5-minute experiment, I could have turned off my phone, and it would have eliminated 3 or 4 distractions to help me focus on writing my book, but I didn't. How many of you out there have been having a really important conversation with a friend or a colleague, and in the middle of this important conversation, a text message comes through, and in the middle of that, your flow of conversation is lost? This is something that happens to all of us these days, and it doesn't even surprise us anymore. We find that we are so overwhelmed with the amount of technology coming into our lives that these distractions seem normal in our lives. A recent phone survey actually studied how many people would pick up the phone in certain settings, and 50% of individuals said that they would pick up their cell phone in the middle of dinner, which doesn't surprise me. 50% said that they'd actually pick up their phone in the bathroom, and even worse, 1/3 said that they would pick up their cell phone during sex. Not okay. I mean, really. We find that distractions leave us feeling so desired, so needed, that it can become intoxicating and addictive. And instead, what we realize is that in the process of chasing after happiness with our technology, we wind up running right off the happiness cliff like Wile E. Coyote, and we splat to the bottom of a canyon before we realize that the ground has dropped out beneath us, and we're no longer feeling as happy as we thought we were. These distractions invade our lives and find ways to keep us from getting to the things that we really want to do in life, to find our potential, to be the kind of people that we want to be. So is the solution to take a sort of digital detox or a South Beach tech diet? I don't think so. I think that we know from past experience, right, that diets are just short-term interventions. They're not long-term solutions. Instead, I think we need to learn how to live with the complexity of life and not escape from it. I think we need to find a way to be in this world and find happiness in the midst of the distraction. It's time that we ground ourselves in intention. It's time that we find a way to actually be able to find something that grounds us into what we really care about, what we're really doing. In the same way that a 3rd prong on an electrical outlet helps to channel and focus our energy, so we need to tap into our 3rd prong, which I define as a system of guiding beliefs and principles that help us decide when, where, why, and how we use technology in our lives. Now, this might mean for you, it might mean setting a rule in your family that during the dinner hour, you're going to set up a phone stack in the middle of the table, and the first person to reach to grab their cell phone loses dessert. Or maybe it means setting an intention when you wake up in the morning that the first thing you look at in the morning is not going to be your cell phone, which might be hard. Some other people that I know have actually had to set up visual reminders to help them control the impulse control and to help them be more the person that they want to be. My friend Raj Daniels runs a tech startup in Dallas called Open Time. And he decided that he was surrounded by technology so often, he needed a simple gut check to help him remember when he should be checking his phone. And so he set up and said when he thought about swiping to unlock his phone, he would look at his phone lock screen, and it said, towards my goals or away from my goals. And if he found that his intention for opening his phone was moving him away from his goals, he simply tucked the phone back in his pocket and proceeded with his day. Visual reminders like this are so important for helping ground us to our intentions, helping us to become the person that we want to be, and it makes it that much easier for us to turn off non-essential notifications when we connect why this matters to us and who we want to be and how we hope to get there. So the second question I often hear from people is, how do I teach my kids positive boundaries in a negative digital world? My husband, whose name is Dr. Bobo, which is a whole other story, he's actually an adolescent medicine doctor at a clinic in Dallas called Young Men's Health and Wellness. And in his clinic, every single day, parents and their teens come in, and the parents are always asking, how do I set appropriate tech boundaries for my teens? And in particular, there was this one day a woman walked in, she was agonizing over whether or not to let her son, who is socially awkward, get a Snapchat account. And she knew the statistics. She knew that social media accounts can often lead to greater isolation, that it can increase the chance of bullying. But she also knew that if she didn't let her son get a social media account, it might actually further isolate him from his community. Parents feel like they're stuck in a catch-22. But the truth is that technology is just a tool. Bullying and isolation can happen anywhere. But what's important is thinking about how we can set up our children for success by teaching them positive boundaries for living in a technological world dominated by negativity. We need to teach our young people positive skill sets for coping in the modern world. We need to teach them positive habits like journaling, gratitude, acts of kindness, meditation, exercise. We need to help our young people align their positive offline identity with their online identity rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses. We need to teach them the importance of authenticity, which Dr. Brené Brown refers to. She defines it as the process of embracing who you are as opposed to who you think you're supposed to be every day. When we teach our young people how to create greater authenticity in their relationships, we set them up for a future of success because social support is the greatest predictor of long-term happiness and success in our lives. We need to also help our young people by setting up invisible fences in our environments to help them learn where boundaries ought to be for the future. And one of these invisible boundaries that I set up recently in my house is called Kids Wi-Fi. And it's simply a router that plugs into the wall like a nightlight, and it hops onto my home router network. And it enables me to control not only when my kids are on the internet, but also what they see and what their friends bring into my house as well. And I kid you not, one day after installing Kids Wi-Fi, my fashionista 9-year-old daughter came running to me. She said, "Mom, the internet's broken." I said, "What were you searching for, sweetie?" "Just cute girl short skirt." I thought, oh, score one for Mom. We as parents can't be everywhere all the time. And it's time that we start learning how to fight fire with fire by using technology to help us automate so many of these boundaries that we can't protect our kids from everything. By using invisible fences, we set ourselves up to be able to help make invisible fences not invisible kids. Because sometimes we think that fences actually hold us back, but instead they make us more mindful, they make us more free, and they ultimately make us happier and teach our kids where appropriate boundaries are for the long run. The third question I often hear from audiences is, well, okay, technology is great and all, but how do I use technology to actually make me happier in a meaningful way? We're fortunate enough today to be living in a time where the cognitive revolution has collided with the technological revolution, giving us the opportunity to peel back the layers of our mind to really understand what's happening in our lives on a day-to-day basis in real time. And fitness trackers are just the beginning. We have new technology, new wearables in our environment that are going to be transformational for understanding how to bring about positive change in our lives. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to be able to test out a number of gadgets and apps, actually hundreds at this point. And I have literally been shocked by posture trainers. I've been pricked by blood testers. I've had my skin peeled off by Velcro adhesive. I have gotten my skin in the game. And in the process of this, I've actually discovered some really amazing wearables and gadgets that I find to be transformational in my life. And one of those is called the Spire Stone. And the Spire Stone is a small lava-shaped rock that clips onto your bra strap or your waistband. And all it does is it measures your breathing to help you understand, are you feeling tense or calm or focused? And if you're feeling tense, it begins to vibrate. Well, this technology was fascinating to me. I'm a naturally anxious person, and so I liked the feedback loop of being able to understand my breath patterns and remember to breathe. But about 5 days into testing this device, it went from fascinating to fundamentally transformative for me. Through a series of unfortunate circumstances, my daughter, who's 9 at that time, Anna, she managed to break her neck last summer. And it was in our backyard pool, and fortunately, she's fine now, and she's back to doing backflips all over the house. But at the time, it was a really dramatic moment for our family. And I remember driving Anna to the hospital, and I happened to be wearing my Spire Stone at that point. And on the way to the hospital, the Spire Stone said that I was surprisingly calm the whole way. I was calm through the doctor visit and the x-rays and the fitting for this massive neck brace that she was gonna have to wear all summer. It wasn't until after we were walking out of the hospital that the Spire Stone started to vibrate, saying, "You're feeling tense." I said, "I know." My daughter just broke her neck. But what it made me do in that moment was really stop and think about why I was feeling tense. And here's what I realized. I realized in that moment that I was actually feeling tense about how other people in the hospital were going to perceive me as the mother of a daughter with a broken neck. Instead of thinking about how my daughter was feeling in that moment, as she was contemplating her new reality for the summer of no swimming, no lacrosse, no gymnastics. And that 30-second feedback loop helped me to be able to refocus and to mindfully pivot from being self-absorbed to being more the mother that I want to be. This is technology at its finest. And there are so many examples of technology that give me hope for the future. Technology from water filtration devices that are helping to solve the global water crisis to websites that are now helping to crowdsource information to help in natural disasters. And these are just the beginning. There's so many technologies. What's amazing to me and what's so beautiful about the digital era is that you don't have to have an engineering degree to create the next big advancement. You simply have to have an idea and a growth mindset towards technology, being able and willing to collaborate and learn and to do something, to actually do something with your idea. For instance, my family friend in Dallas, they have a daughter who's 7 years old, and she was born with something called symbrachydactyly, which means that on one hand, she was born with nubs instead of fingers. Never stopped this little girl from doing gymnastics. She can do cartwheels and monkey bars with the best of them. But until just recently, she started to develop some painful blisters on her wrists from trying to grip the monkey bars in unusual ways. And so I told her mom about a resource I'd read about online called Enable. And Enable is an organization, it's a global community of volunteers that helps other people learn how to 3D print prosthetic hands from scratch for just $30. You can do it at home. It's amazing. A week later, my friend calls me and she says, "Amy, you gotta get over here." I said, "Okay, I'm coming." Got to her house and she said, "My husband was so inspired by the Enable website. He spent all weekend in the Frisco library and he managed to print our daughter a hand and assembled it overnight. And I got to watch as his daughter put on the hand for the first time and grabbed a cup with this huge smile on her face." This is the story of one technology, one idea, spreading happiness through the use of technology. And it was amazing to me. It's the story of how one website led to a global community that inspired a father to go find a 3D printer to build a hand for his daughter. And it's a story I share with you today so that we can go on social media so that people understand the importance of looking up resources like this so that we can help make the world a better place. Because technology is a magnifier, and it's only as good as the connections that we make with it. We should be shapers of technology, not the other way around. Because the same technology that leads to bullying is the same technology that can now lend a helping hand. For all the frustration and the distractions and the dangers of the technological era, let's not lose sight of where we're going and where we want to be going in the future. Let's be part of the solution by mindfully choosing to use technology for its best and highest purposes. This is the future of happiness, and it's up to us to create it. Thank you so much. Thank you.